She cleaned his mansion for 5 years, then found out he killed her parents. The wind howled through the trees as she stood frozen at the edge of the marble hallway, the feather duster slipping from her trembling hand. The letter in her other hand, aged, yellowed, and sealed with the blood of memory, shook violently as tears blurred her vision. The ornate walls around her, once symbols of power and perfection, now felt like prison gates. She had cleaned this mansion for 5 years. Scrubbed its chandeliers, dusted its priceless art, polished its cruel beauty without ever knowing the truth that would shatter her soul. The man who lived here. The man who paid her. The man who smiled at her every morning. He didn't just own this house. He owned her pain. He had murdered her parents. Sparkles, if you believe in kindness, second chances, and the strength of the human spirit, please like, comment, share, and subscribe to Echoes of Life. Every interaction helps these stories reach hearts that need them most. Sparkles. The story didn't begin in that mansion. It began in the dust of loss, in the quiet ache of an orphaned girl named Areeba, growing up on the fringes of Karachi. She was just 10 when the news came. Her parents had died in a rainy night crash, their car crushed against a truck on a highway too far for any neighbor to reach in time. There were no survivors. No witnesses. Only a cold, final report and a few relatives to shrug through a funeral. She bounced between homes after that. Relatives took her in with forced smiles and bitter hearts. Her aunt would slap her for wetting the bed. Her uncle would drink and mutter how she was a mouth they couldn't afford to feed. At school, she kept her head low, afraid that raising her voice would invite the next punishment. When she turned 16, she began working small jobs. Washing clothes, serving tea in offices, anything to buy her own soap, her own notebook, her own sense of control. By 18, she moved out. Areeba found a small rented room in a crumbling apartment complex. The walls peeled. The neighbors argued through thin plaster. But it was hers. She paid rent by working long hours as a house cleaner. She took pride in it. Cleaning was something she could control. It was something she could master. And it was during one of her jobs that she heard of a vacancy at the Malik mansion. Everyone in Karachi knew about Idris Malik. The man whose name floated through business corridors, whispered at government parties. A self-made billionaire. A reclusive genius. A man of mystery. He rarely appeared in public, but his legacy spread through stories. Some claimed he was ruthless, others said he was brilliant. Either way, his mansion stood like a crown above the city. Hiring there was rare. Areeba was one of the lucky few. When she walked through those grand iron gates for the first time, she felt like she was walking into a dream sculpted from marble and silence. The floors were so polished you could see your reflection in them. Crystal chandeliers shimmered overhead like suspended rain. Massive paintings stared down from every wall, portraits of people with cold eyes and colder smiles. The mansion was beautiful. And terrifying. The head butler, Mr. Kadir, gave her one warning: do your work. Don't ask questions. Never enter the East Wing. She didn't question it. She didn't question anything. For 5 years, Areeba became invisible. She cleaned floors, polished banisters, arranged flowers, scrubbed windows until her fingers cracked. Mr. Malik was rarely around, but when he was always distant, always dressed in black, always watching with unreadable eyes. He never raised his voice. Never spoke more than a sentence at a time. But Areeba always sensed something off. Something hollow beneath the wealth. She would sometimes catch him staring at an old book in the library. Or standing by a locked cabinet. Or gazing out the massive glass windows as if searching for something beyond the sea. Still, she told herself not to think too much. She was lucky to have this job. Her salary helped her pay for her own place. She now supported her elderly aunt, paid tuition for a cousin. She had freedom. She had survived. But the mansion held secrets. It was a rainy afternoon, the kind of rain that made the city slow, the kind that soaked the earth and made old wounds ache, when Areeba was assigned to clean the east wing. Kadir had fallen ill, and another worker had left abruptly. For the first time, the rule was broken. As she stepped into the forbidden part of the house, the air changed. The walls were lined with older furniture, vintage paintings, and antique items. It smelled less like polish and more like memory. She moved through the corridor, careful with every step, until she reached a small study tucked behind a heavy wooden door. Inside, it looked like time had frozen. Papers on the desk. Books half opened. A thick layer of dust across a set of drawers. On the wall hung a photograph, two men, shaking hands. One was younger, bearded, eyes shining with ambition. The other was unmistakable, her father. Areeba felt the ground slip beneath her. She moved closer. Her father was smiling in the photo, arm linked with none other than Idris Malik. Her mind raced. Her breath quickened. Behind the frame, taped to the back, was a letter. Her father's handwriting. She opened it with trembling fingers. The words inside shattered her world. Her father had discovered Malik's involvement in illegal dealings, money laundering, offshore accounts, political bribery. He had threatened to expose him. The letter hinted at Malik's warnings, threats. If something happens to us, he wrote, it wasn't an accident. It was Idris. The date was just days before the so-called accident. Areeba couldn't breathe. Everything she had known was a lie. The man she had worked for. The man who paid her. The man she had trusted for years, had killed her parents. The rage inside her boiled over. She stormed out of the east wing, the letter clutched in her fist. Her vision blurred with tears. She wanted to scream, to confront him, to make him pay. But when she reached the main hall, Idris was already there. As if he knew. As if he'd been waiting. Their eyes met. For a long moment, nothing moved. Then he spoke. Quietly. Coldly. You finally found it. She stepped back, fear now mixing with fury. Why? She asked, voice breaking. Why did you do it? He didn't deny it. He simply looked past her, as if remembering a version of himself that had long died. Because your father was going to destroy everything I built. Her fists clenched. You destroyed a family. A pause. Then, something unexpected. Regret. I never wanted to hurt your mother, he whispered. She was innocent. I tried to spare her. But she was in the car. That night, Areeba didn't sleep. She sat alone in her tiny room, the rain pouring outside, the letter by her side. Her world had shattered, but something in her heart had lit up, a purpose. A fire. She began digging. She spent months researching her father's old files. She met with an old journalist who had once worked with him. She uncovered records, hidden accounts, secret documents. Bit by bit, she built a case. And then, she released it. Anonymously. The scandal exploded. The media swarmed. The authorities had no choice but to investigate. Malik's empire began to crumble. Shareholders pulled out. Partners turned against him. The truth spilled into every headline. And yet, she didn't feel victory. Because justice, in the real world, never comes clean. Malik was arrested, but his lawyers fought back. The trial dragged on. He denied everything. And through it all, he never mentioned her. Never exposed her name. Never retaliated. It was as if, in the end, he gave her that. The mansion was sold. The staff dispersed. The great glass windows that once overlooked the city now reflected only emptiness. Areeba stood at the gates one last time. She looked up at the house she had once served in, and down at the life she had reclaimed. Her tears fell, not just for the past, but for the strange, twisted path that brought her here. She didn't feel hate anymore. Just grief. For what was lost. For what could never be restored. But she had survived. She had spoken truth. And she was free. Sparkles, if this story touched your heart, please like, comment, share, and subscribe to Echoes of Life. Your support helps us bring more powerful stories to the world. Sparkles. Speech balloon, what would you have done if you were in Areeba's place? Share your thoughts in the comments below, we'd love to hear your voice. Speech balloon.